13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
Welcome back to another episode of 13 Questions. This time we are joined by a very special guest, Graham Dunlop, and he's actually here with us for the intro. So what's up, Graham? What's going on?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Dude, yeah, it's such a special episode that we have one of the OG founders on, right? And of course Adam is here as with me always, right? Adam Loyal. Adam.
Hello.
Cabinet. So I thought that since Graham is one of the progenitors, that he could just join us for the intro, and that we would all kind of share gratitudes together, because that is one thing that I have learned through doing this show, is that gratitude is key. So in order to kind of help facilitate the heart, brain, mind connection at the beginning of each episode, Adam and I have been sharing something that brings us joy in our lives, right? Something that makes us happy. So we even have a jingle that helps us kind of get in the mood. And that jingle is brought to you by Sir Felix Ortega, who's jingle master, right? It's not a lot. He does all the jingles for Grimerica, or a lot of them, right? So,
and not just jingles,
yeah.
Really good, catchy jingles.
Yeah. And songs. I mean, yeah, check them out at sirfelix.bandcamp.com.
Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude.
So Adam was talking about something before we recorded. I don't know if you wanted to open up with that, or I can go first, or it's up to you.
I'm sorry, Bill. I was turning that music off.
Oh.
What did you say?
You were talking about something in jest, kind of, before we hit the record button for the gratitude. Did you want to use that, or?
No. Actually, I do have a real,
okay,
not a real gratitude, but I have a prepared gratitude.
Okay, why don't you go first, and then we'll get Graham's, and then I'll go last, because then we're going to add a stone to our gratitude jar working afterwards. So I'll be the last one.
My gratitude is it's been along the same vein that my gratitudes have been lately, which is frequency. But this year for Christmas, and this is going to be a little spoiler alert, Bill. I was like, like you think about getting somebody a gift, it's something that's very personal. And, I was thinking about frequency and purple and, all the synchronicities and everything that have come along with the show in that realm. And I wanted to kind of just represent that in a gift to you. And it brought me towards music. And you'll find out. I won't completely ruin it for you, but it was amazing because I'm downloading this stuff, I'm getting it prepared, I know I'm going to be sending this off to you, and I'm thinking about how awesome this album is, the feelings that it gives me, how it makes me feel, and then I'm going, but this is the gift that I'm giving to you. And it is amazing, just the frequency of sound that you can take I have that experience. Now, you're not going to experience it the same way, but I can gift to you that thing through frequency. And, it's the same thing as a light frequency, or, the frequency of thought. It's the frequency of sound. And I don't know, man. I'm very grateful that, that I can do that I can take air moving and bring you joy.
Hell yeah, that is awesome. Thank you. I'm looking forward to finding out what this is, but yeah, absolutely sharing that experience that you get from listening to music, that particular type, right? And then being able to transmute that, give that to somebody else. It's a feeling that you communicate through, like you were saying, frequency, air, sound, right? All these things. that are somewhat etheric. I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah, I mean, but that's what I love about sound is because at the end of the day, it's just a simple vibration. You know, a speaker and a microphone are the exact same device. One is pushing air, one is receiving the vibration, and if you record that signal, like everything else in life, all the other production, all the other words, the experiences, they eventually just created this signal, this frequency. And that frequency, when you are exposed to it, elicits a feeling. And I don't know, that's magic.
It is. It is. And I think that you might have inspired me to change mine at the last moment. But we'll get to that in a second. Graham, did you have something you wanted to share?
Sure. Yeah. I'm grateful for my girlfriend's openness when I ask her to practice gratitude. She's had a couple times where she's been sick or not well, and she's noticed like an instant flip. Like she goes into this like state of gratitude. I mean, it's not easy for her to do when you have a chronic condition. It's probably, I can imagine it would be very hard to get yourself out of that sort of like pain state. But a couple times she's like went into this gratitude state, and it's actually like, it's almost like flicking a switch. So that physiological reaction to gratitude is real, and it can be very moment changing. You know, it's not like it provides any deep healing, but it definitely can take care of the symptoms.
Hell yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's changing your state of mind and just trying to be like, when you're like, I was sick recently, right? And didn't feel too good and lost sense of smell and whatnot, and fever and laying in bed and, you know, all that stuff. But, you know, still, when you feel that bad, you're willing to try fucking anything, right? To feel better. So even if it's just being like, think of something else for a second that makes you happy. You know?
Yeah, that's what I said to her. Just start with something small, super small. Like, what's the tiniest little thing you could be grateful for right now? You know, your blankets, your pillow, like your cat, like whatever. And a lot of times lately, I'm grateful for my home, just my home and my cats and my girlfriend and just simple things.
Yeah. Especially recently up here. I'm in Michigan and it's like fucking cold out, right? So like when you're sick, you know, you don't want to, like, I'm thankful I'm inside and warm, like 100%. That was one of those things that crossed my mind for sure.
Yeah. The simple thing, the ability to survive in your environment. We are all living better than kings of, you know, yesteryear. It's amazing. My favorite thing to go to, it's like you can get fresh, clean water and salt for free at any fast food convenience. Just go in and grab a handful, ask for a cup, you're good. But meanwhile, in parts of the world in ancient time, those were the most valuable things.
Yeah,
right.
that's a good one.
And that kind of touches back on to what I was going to do for my gratitude. And I think it's going to be water, because it is extremely dry in my house. It has been until I started using my humidifiers, the little ones that puff like the essential oils in the air and stuff. So that was my gratitude is I guess water, because it also has the ability to carry messages, right, and frequency and memory. Like these things are not really talked about too much in the open, right? But they're known, and that's freaking cool, right? And yeah, like just everything else is dry except water, right? Like water is kind of unique. So,
well, and people want to separate it and think it's just water, but no, you are mostly this thing. It's part of you. So yeah, you are experiencing it. You are part of it. It is, I don't know, it's essential.
it is essential. Just like gratitude. And speaking of gratitude, we're going to add to our gratitude jar. And gratitude jar, for those of listeners that haven't been following along, is kind of a recent project that I've initiated, because we are a value for value podcast. So if you like what you're hearing, if you resonate with it, and you want to show some gratitude back to us, if you donate any amount for any period of time, I'll write your name in purple ink and put it in this jar, which is surrounded by various stones that have metaphysical properties which facilitate in strengthening the heart-brain coherence, or some aspect of that in some way. And I guess I could kind of name them off real quick. We did add recently, I'll go backwards, if I can remember. Actually, we'll
I
just
know
do
the
it this
last
way.
one.
Yeah. It hasn't come out yet. So, but we have cobalt and calcite. We've got sugilite, charolite, and then petrified wood, purple epidolite, purpurite, Shangan quartz. No, I'm sorry, Branberg quartz, stitchtite, pink tourmaline, amethyst, pink smithsonite. We added sage, made the transition into the plant world. And now we're going to go back into the mineral kingdom, where we're going to add, all these stones have been purple, except for Darren's. The stone that we added on Darren's episode, the other progenitor, was blue. That's the azurite. And so I thought for this episode, we'd add a green one, because those are kind of like the show colors, right? Purple, green, and pink. Well, not pink, but purple, green, and blue, if you look at the logos.
That is our base frequency.
Yeah. And purple is actually, it's supposed to be allegedly the color of sovereignty, right? So freedom, we can all get behind that, right? So for this one, we're going to add moldavite. And I've got a little chunk of it here, which I will put next to the jar when we're finished.
Nice. That's my favorite stone too.
Is it?
I have a crazy synchronicity from the UFO Congress 2013 with moldavite.
Oh, I've got it's on a necklace right now, and on the necklace is this guy. I'm going to take him off, I think, though. But
What happened at the Congress there?
Well, I went to Sedona, and
I'm already salivating. You have no idea. I wanted to go so bad.
And I went to one of these new age stores, like one of the big sort of prominent ones near the Crystal Bowl shop. There's a whole whack of crystal bowls there. It's in that same little sort of strip parking lot. And this lady at the till was talking about these bracelets that were from Lemuria, or they're Atlantean or something. Like nobody knows where they came from and all this. And I'm like, oh yeah. So we talked about those bracelets, and then I bought this little chunk of moldavite. And I was talking to a guy at the UFO Congress, and moldavite came up, and I think I bought the book at the same time about it. And he showed me this like little moldavite that looked exactly like mine. And then he mentioned the bracelets too. Like we had this whole synchro with both maybe with the same woman at the till, but both talking about these bracelets and buying moldavite from this shop, and then just somehow coming opening up to each other about this at the conference. Now we didn't know prior, we didn't even know each other at all, actually, but it was part of sort of like a bit of a compound synchronicity with other stuff as well. But moldavite breaks on me. I've broken like 2 or 3 pieces of moldavite.
Oh, you're one of those people.
Isn't that weird, eh?
No. I've heard this of other stones. People that'll have them break, or what's the big one?
Yeah, but moldavite usually, you'd think as a tektite it wouldn't break very often. But
I would think that also, but that's absolutely fascinating, and that it drew you to somebody else.
Yeah.
If you see that, crystals actually have a geometry, and there could be some sort of, conscious or, some sort of thing that can actually interface with your consciousness or change it. That's fascinating to see 2 of those stones, drawing individuals together.
Yeah.
Synchronicities is one of the things that it's supposed to increase with moldavite. Have moldavite around, so it makes sense. Like it's super cool.
I got to get some new stones, apparently.
But are you familiar with the Grail connection, Graham?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we're going to learn about the Grail stone connection in moldavite. We've been using Robert Simmons's The Book of Stones as our source, along with another encyclopedia by Judy Hall. But moldavite holds a special place in Robert's life. So we're going to read from Robert. And before I begin, there is an author's note, and he says that moldavite is the stone that initiated me into awareness of the spiritual properties of crystals and minerals, as well as my personal spiritual destiny. It has, over the 22 years I have worked in this field, had similar effects on thousands of other people in whom I have spoken and corresponded. From my perspective, it has a special role to play in the awakening. It has a special role to play in the awakening of humanity, that is now underway. And for this reason, we are to go into Moldavite's story in somewhat more depth than we do with the other stones. So, continuing, he starts, scientific theorists differ on hypotheses regarding Moldavite's origin. Some contend that Moldavite is earthly rock melted by the heat of the meteorite crash, while others suggest that the material is of extraterrestrial origin, possibly a type of obsidian ejected by a lunar volcano. A third theory holds that Moldavite is a fusion product of meteoric material and earthly rock that were vaporized in the tremendous heat of the impact explosion, the resultant gas being propelled high into the atmosphere. This gaseous material would have been cooled and condensed into a liquid glass, which, quote, rained down on the crater and surrounding areas. Regardless of which, if any of these theories is correct, it is known that Moldavite indeed fell from the sky because of the aerodynamic shapes of certain pieces, and virtually all scientists associate it with the meteoric collision that formed the Bohemian Plateau and surrounding mountains. The event which gave birth to Moldavite was one of tremendous power. The force of the impact explosion has been estimated at 6 trillion megatons, far more than all the atom bombs on Earth. The heat, as mentioned above, was high enough to vaporize rock, and the main body of the meteorite is believed to have passed completely through the Earth's crust, penetrating into the liquid iron at the planet's core. This deep impact is said to have disturbed the currents of rotating liquid iron enough to cause the reversal of Earth's magnetic poles. Throughout history, and even into prehistory, Moldavite has been regarded as a spiritual talisman. The Neolithic peoples of Eastern Europe wore Moldavite at least 25,000 years ago, and the famed Venus of Willendorf, the earliest known goddess statue, was discovered in a digging site which contained a number of Moldavite amulets. People of that period also used Moldavite for arrowheads and cutting tools. More recently, Moldavite has been viewed as a relic of the legend of the Holy Grail. In some recountings, the Grail is said not to be a cup, but a stone, an emerald that fell from the sky. In other stories, the Grail cup was carved from the emerald. The correspondences of the stone of the Grail with Moldavite are clear. The ancients called all clear gemstones emeralds, and Moldavite is the only such stone ever to have fallen from the sky. In history, there was even a physical Grail discovered and brought to Napoleon, who was disappointed to find it was green glass. But of course, Moldavite is green glass. Another chalice, this one made of gold and adorned with Moldavites, was passed down through the centuries and disappeared during the Second World War. In the 1930s, the famed artist, mystic Nicholas Roerich compared a Moldavite, which he called Agni Mani, meaning fire pearl, to the fabled stone of Shambhala, further asserting it was the same stone contained in the Holy Grail. Interestingly, the energetic effects... lost my spot, sorry. Interestingly, the energetic effects of Moldavite parallel those attributed to the fabled Grail stone. In Czech lore, Moldavite was believed to bring harmony to marital relationships and was used as a traditional betrothal gift for centuries. Once again, the stone of the Grail was believed to have similar properties. In modern times, Moldavite has emerged as one of the stones most prized for metaphysical purposes. Its effects vary widely, from mild to almost overwhelming, from physical cleansings to spiritual breakthroughs. Yet, common denominator seems to be the revitalization and acceleration of one's path of personal evolution. People who hold Moldavite for the first time most often experience its energy as warmth or heat, usually felt first in one's hand and then progressively throughout the body. In some cases, there is an opening of the heart chakra, which is characterized by strange, though not painful, sensations in the chest, an upwelling of emotion, and a flushing of the face. This has happened often enough to have been given the name the Moldavite flush. Other ways of feeling Moldavite's energies include pulsations in the hand while holding the stone, tingling in the third eye and heart chakras, a feeling of lightheartedness or dizziness, and occasionally the sense of being lifted out of one's body. Most people feel that Moldavite excites their energies and speeds their vibrations, especially for the first days or weeks. until one becomes acclimated to it. However, some individuals, especially starborns, find that moldavite relaxes them as if it were a piece of home. Moldavite's energies can activate any and all of the chakras. Its vibrations tend to focus in areas where one has blockages or wounds, first clearing these areas and then moving into resonance with one's entire energetic system. Resonance with moldavite can take many forms. Chakras can open, synchronicities can increase in frequency and significance, one's dream life can become dramatically more vivid and meaningful, one can connect with spirit guides, physical, emotional, or spiritual healings can happen, jobs and relationships can change, meditations can become deeper and more powerful, yet all these can be viewed as symptoms of a shift in one's own energies. The shift is what moldavite can catalyze. With its high and intense vibrations, it can resonate with one's energy pattern in a way that creates an intensification of one's spiritual vitality and an acceleration of one's progress on the path of one's highest destiny. This is much the same effect that legend says one might have received through exposure to the fabled Stone of the Grail. The spiritual grail may be thought of as the awakened and fully realized intelligence of the human heart. Moldavite once again parallels the Stone of the Grail in its affinity to the heart and the heart chakra. Through the heart's electromagnetic field and its accompanying field of unmeasurable subtle energies, we can directly perceive the conditions of other people in the world. The heart's field resonates to all that is, from atoms to galaxies, from individual soul to cosmic consciousness. The heart not only perceives, it also changes conditions. Through the heart's will, it is possible to alter reality, and, knowing this, one has the responsibility of willing the highest good in each moment without knowing what form it will take. Moldavite offers the promise and carries the potential for assisting one in fully awakening the intelligence of the heart. Moldavite is a powerful aid for meditation and dream work. In both cases, taping a piece of moldavite to the forehead can have the effect of creating a much more vivid and visionary inner experience. Moldavite increases one's sensitivity to guidance and one's ability to discern the messages sent from the higher realms. Moldavite can be a powerful catalyst for self-healing, clearing blockages and opening the meridians, as well as energizing the interconnections between all aspects of one's etheric, astral, causal, and physical bodies. Like the ancient fabled Agni Mani, revered in ancient lore, moldavite is a talisman of spiritual awakening, transformation, and evolutionary growth. In addition to use in meditation and dream work, moldavite can be worn as jewelry. Moldavite also offers an energy of spiritual protection. When one is in resonance with its high frequency vibrations, negative energies and entities cannot connect with or hang onto one's field. In alignment with its transformational properties, moldavite tends to disconnect one from unhealthy attachments and magnetize the persons and situations one needs most for evolutionary progress. I gotta get a drink of water. Give me a second.
Huh, that's interesting. That's fascinating. I you know what's weird is I looked for my moldavite in the summer because I was going out to with these UFO watchers and stuff, go try and make contact with some ETs, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I've lost now that I used to have all these different moldavites, I couldn't find any of them.
Weird. Mystery of in itself.
I need to find some because it's I like that like slipperiness of attachments kind of attribute it has. I didn't realize it was so protective.
Yeah, it gets even more interesting, I think, in relation to the Grail, which we'll get into in just a second. There's just a tiny bit more to read through, and then yeah, I promise I'll stop and we'll move on.
I'm still fascinated by these three stones finding their way together into synchronicity between all of us, and then they're leaving you at the same time, and you can't find them.
Yeah, exactly.
Robert says that moldavite is an ideal stone for use in making energy tools. It can be glued or otherwise attached to other stones to magnify both energies. It can be added to wands, headbands, templates, grids, and all sorts of devices to intensify their effects. And then he lists some other stones that work really well with it. And he does mention that moldavite is one of the Synergy 12 stones, which I'm not going to attempt to list here. So the Synergy 12 is this combination is the most powerful yet discovered for enhancement of the etheric pattern of the perfected self. And Moldavite also works harmoniously with these stones with each of these stones on its own. So you don't have to have all 12 together. But so that's interesting. So more on Moldavite and the Grail connection. Robert just has a few paragraphs here on the background, kind of. So he says that one of the first connections I made to the mystical nature of Moldavite brought me into contact with the Grail legend. The magazine article to which I was led by a chain of synchronous events in discussing the legends and lore surrounding Moldavite mentioned that the famous spiritual artist Nicholas Roerich compared Moldavite to the fabled stone of Shambhala, further asserting it was the same stone contained in the Holy Grail. Not knowing much about the Grail legend, I looked it up in a book written by the Grail scholar John Matthews. He mentioned that in some accountings of the tale, the Grail was not a chalice but a stone, an emerald that fell from the sky out of the crown of the angel Lucifer before he was cast from heaven. I was excited by the parallel to the physical history of Moldavite, since it was a green gemstone, not too far from emerald in color, and indeed fell from the sky. There were other interesting associations. The Grail is often depicted as a vessel, such as a chalice. This implies the female body as the chalice that holds the essence of life and can bring forth new life. Worship of the divine feminine has centered around this holy mystery, and one of the curious facts about Moldavite, that amulets of Moldavite were found in the same archaeological dig as the Venus of Willendorf, the oldest known goddess statue, indicates that Moldavite was associated with her before the Grail as a cup was ever imagined. In recorded history, the Grail vessel, in most instances, was held to be the cup which caught the blood of Christ as he died on the cross. In Arthurian romances, which featured the Grail cup magically circulated among the knights and ladies seated at the round table during the Feast of Pentecost, providing each one with the food and drink he or she most desired, giving holy nourishment. To drink from the Grail brought healing and rejuvenation, as well as spiritual awakening. It quickened the destiny path of the knights, guiding them to the adventures they needed to promote their inner strength, inner growth. The Grail was also a talisman of right relationship. Once a knight such as Percival had beheld the Grail, he could not be unfaithful to his true love, and the Grail would always guide him back to her. Again, the parallels to Moldavite are striking. In Czech folklore, Moldavite has for hundreds of years been used as a betrothal gift to bring harmony to the marriage. In current times, the most frequent comment I hear from people about the effects of carrying or wearing Moldavite is the speeding up of the person's spiritual evolution or destiny path. Having Moldavite seems to accelerate the attraction of the situations one most needs for growth and a dissolving of connections with whatever holds one back. All this being said, the most compelling Grail connection I see with Moldavite has to do with the awakening of the Grail of the heart. As I wrote in the first chapter of this book, biologists now say that the bodies of living organisms, like ourselves, are liquid crystal, displaying a coherence of structure and dynamic organization that approaches that of solid crystals. Liquid crystals are tunable to different frequencies, as we are. Solid crystals emanate specific vibrational patterns, with we can resonate. The shift we feel in this resonating may be our inner realignment or attunement to the frequency of the stone. As a glassy substance, Moldavite is technically more of a liquid crystal than a solid one. With its connections to the fabled stone of the Grail, it may be the talisman by which we can all, quote, drink from that sacred vessel. Think now back to the scene of Christ on the cross. His blood was caught in the Grail cup, which means that this cup carried the vibrational pattern, the liquid crystal alignment of his blood. If we are to believe the legends, he lived in perfect attunement to, in complete trust of, the divine. In other words, he was filled with love and free from fear. He was nourished completely by the divine connection. To drink from the Grail, the vessel holding the vibrational pattern contained in his blood, was to take that pattern into one's body. To do that was to take the Christ into one's heart. Remember all the artistic renderings of Christ showing his heart exposed outside his chest? Indeed, the heart is the cup, the chalice that holds our blood. If we take the Christic pattern into our hearts. We drink the pattern of attunement to the divine, which he embodied, and we receive the total nourishment that comes from attunement to that pattern. Further correspondences. Pictures of the Grail often depicted as a cup overflowing with the outpouring of divine blessing. If we, as liquid crystal beings, reattune the pattern of our hearts to the frequencies of the divine, the heart will then pump the blood, our own blood, carrying that pattern to all parts of our body, a perfect analog for the overflowing Grail chalice. Now, if Moldavite is the physical world embodiment of the mythical Grail stone, it may be possible through attunement to Moldavite's frequency patterns to realign our own hearts with the divine, thus activating our own inner Grail, receiving its nourishment and becoming sources of divine nourishment in the world. As the heart pumps the blood through its perfected recrystallized pattern, the blood takes on the pattern and our entire body becomes a Grail, overflowing with blessings for the world. If enough people achieve this reattunement with or without Moldavite, such a shift might manifest as a widespread or even universal attainment of Christ consciousness, enactment of what has been imagined as the second coming. There are many more connections to the story than I have space to write here, and he kind of ends that section, but then he goes on to a meditation that you can do with it, and I'm going to stop talking and drink some water now.
No, I love this. And I never even thought about that. I mean, we were talking about water earlier, but the liquid attunement, that's fascinating because an electrolyte is salt. Salt is a crystal. Like we are already interfacing on a fundamental level with a crystal that is bringing us life. And I hadn't even thought about liquid crystals. I've talked about how awesome it is that I have a quartz watch with a piece of vibrating crystal that's telling time, but then it's visually representing like structure that's changing and being modified. And that's all done in liquid crystals. And yeah, like we really are surrounded by gem technology and we're running on it. You know, this thing that can be programmed with these stones that have structure have to be mixed together and be part of us for us to survive. So yeah, some of these fundamental questions about the properties of these things that are esoteric are really like, that's fundamentally really important.
It is. And the cool part about all this stuff and any of the stones that we've talked about is that you don't necessarily physically have to have them in your presence. The fact that you're thinking about them right now.
You got them in your body. You got salt. You got sodium.
That's the frequency.
Potassium, you got crystals within you. That's pretty amazing to think about. You're a crystal being.
And you just control it with your thoughts. It's the power.
Look at
of
what
the
they're
mind.
using in the space program with all these programmed crystals, right? They're literally putting information into crystals. The crystals are holding data. So, I mean, what do we hold in our bodies?
Which frequency do we want? Yeah. It's all information.
Yeah. What stone am I going to ingest? It just happens to be, I mean, it's a mineral. It just is water soluble. Bill, man, good food for thought.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have officially placed the Moldavite on the green cloth I have all the other stones on with the jar. So it's official. It is added. It's a thing. I'll take a picture of it, put it on Discord.
No, I love it. It's one of my favorite stones now. I didn't realize that it had such an ancient lore going back to it falling from the sky and many ancient myths, which take that on its own because, I mean, how do you identify this stone is from that type of an impact from so far long ago? There's a technology that's lost in either information of finding that or of direct knowledge. And yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's been passed down to us and we just forgot it.
Right. Yeah. The part about it going all the way to the center of the earth is kind of interesting too. One of those theories, but I digress. We are here for 13 questions with Graham Dunlop. So Adam and I have been kind of doing a new thing. We've been splitting up the questions. So he's been doing the first 7 or the last 7, and then we switch off in between. So Adam, do you think you want to start?
Sure. Might as well change it up.
Yeah.
I've done the last few.
And I did put so the questions are in the chat.
All right, Graham, you ready?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, we'll see how Graham has evolved.
I mean, first of all, a big thanks to you guys for keeping this thing going and taking it and expanding it and running with it. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And I do think I was on a while ago. Honestly, like there's some things it was coming back to me. Like I didn't listen to the old ep, but as I was answering these questions, it was coming back to me and I thought, a lot of the stuff is still the same. I mean, I might have a slightly different angle from it, but some of it's probably going to be fairly repetitive because there's some pretty big things that just don't change in your life, So
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Question 1. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Well, I mean, many years ago, I probably would have said, like sensitivity and all this kind of stuff. But now I'm sort of more about, I think it's better to be, it means honesty, integrity, strength, wisdom, stoicism, being standing up for what's true and what's right, in that regard. So I think my views shifted over the years on this. Now I'm kind of into a more sort of philosopher king, masculine sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
In the way the world's gone, you've been kind of forced to walk in those shoes further and further. There's just certain things we don't accept as human beings, and so many of us are just put into a world where it's like, the foot keeps getting put down because I got to.
Yeah,
Before it wasn't a choice. Now it's like.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the honesty part too, because that was something that Adam emphasized when I first started helping out with the show. Is just as long as you're sure that the guest is going to be honest, and we're going to have it's going to be a great conversation, and yeah, you can't have self-development without being honest. And
yeah, totally. That's like the number one thing for me. And that comes from recovery for me because I didn't realize how much I was lying till I got sober. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucking lying. Like lying to myself, lying to other people, making up excuses. Like, what the fuck? Because I always thought of myself as a good guy, but really I was deluding myself.
Yeah, you believe your own lies. You tell them long enough and it becomes the truth.
Yeah.
What was the most important lesson you learned from your parents?
Now, this is probably the similar, but I mean, it's presence, being in the moment. I mean, I remember my dad giving me advice, and this was kind of from a corporate world thing. I followed in his footsteps in the corporate world for a few years, like 13 years probably. And he was like, be in the moment, And I think he was talking about, in the boardroom or in the meetings, like, don't be sort of lollygagging and daydreaming, be in the moment in those things, right? And he was like that. He was sort of there for you. And my mom was taking these courses in the 80s, and thinking back, she was learning about what she called being internal. So being internal is not being in the moment, right? They used to call it that. I don't know if it was like one of these Dale Carnegie courses, or who's that other like famous self-help dude?
Napoleon Hill?
No, like more of like from the 80s. Anyways, I'm glad she was open enough to do that, because she was realizing how internal she was, because I don't think she was listening to us or hearing us, and it was probably causing conflict in the family. And she's like, I have to be present. So she would actually make a point of not being internal and being present for us. And I still think I have a bit of like weird trauma about people not hearing me, not listening to me. When people interrupt me, it fucking sort of, sometimes it bristles. And I think it stems from that.
That's crazy. Yeah, I can see that. Being present in the moment is so important, especially when you start to realize that really is all that is in the world. Like ultimately, when I think about like 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it starts to become like what life? I don't remember. Like ultimately, like, time passes, ash to ash, dust to dust, it really just becomes the most important things are the things that are closest to you right now. And you might as well be living in that, because if you're thinking too far away from it, like you're not here now and you're not there then.
And how does that affect your memory? I used to think, what if I'm not in the moment? Am I even remembering what's going on from back then? Like,
and what's your memory of it?
Like,
your
what's
memory
my memory of what I was doing? It's just my memory of daydreaming. You know, like, is it not a full memory because I wasn't really present?
Right. It's like you're drifting, by not being present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can't even go back and remember those things. I mean, I have a problem with memory anyways. I mean, but imagine what it would be like if I wasn't trying to be present.
Be Here Now by Ram Dass was one of those books that really made an impact when I read it. It's just all, self-explanatory, right?
That's also a beautiful word that has a double entendre of, a present and being present. So the moment is a present.
Yeah.
What book has been most influential on your life and why?
Yeah, see, again, I bet you I answered this very similar, but when I keep coming, I mean, I've read so many fucking books since the last time we chatted on this, and some of them have had an impact, but nothing like the simplicity of the Four Agreements, right? And being impeccable with your word, that comes back to that honesty again. Don't take anything personally, which is hard to do sometimes, but very important. And don't make assumptions, and always do your best. I mean, always doing your best is a tough one because it's pretty subjective. Am I doing my best? What if I need more time to relax or meditate? Is that there's always that struggle of like productivity over does that mean I'm my best if I'm productive? So that's a tough one. But I mean, those are important. I think those are important rules to live by. And the New Earth, when I was in recovery and addiction 15 years ago, almost 15 years ago now, I was reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, and I had some synchronicities with that book that I finally tried Qigong in recovery. And I was reading excerpts of that book to the group and when we had these group sessions and stuff. I was such a geek. And that day, when I finally did Qigong, so I waited for quite a while. That day, I opened up Eckhart Tolle's book, and the first word I looked down at was Qigong. And it happened to be the day that I first did Qigong, and it was that was like, because I really enjoyed Qigong. It made quite an impact on me, and then I just opened up his book, and that was the word. So I mean, that had a synchronistic impact on my life.
You said you tried Qigong. Was it through the book, or was it like
no, they had a course in the recovery I was in, the addiction treatment center. So they had like yoga and Qigong in there. So every morning they would do Qigong, and I kept putting it off. And then I finally went, and then that happened.
Is it something, do you still practice?
No.
No. Was it something that you think that you could pick up from just looking at a book and having instructions that way, or? Yeah,
I think so. Probably guided would be better, easier, but I mean, honestly, I should do it again. I mean, that it would be like a combination of kind of physical, doing something physical and meditative as well.
Yeah, because that those types of movements, like Tai Chi, right? Like the breath to movement, but they're slower and like less intense, I guess. I've spoken to me like I need to read a book, right?
yeah
What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it at all today?
Yeah, see, this is one of those overlapping things for me. I feel like that was just being present again was probably the best advice if I had to look at it. I mean, it's kind of indirect, but I mean, maybe I feel like there should be something more powerful there, but I mean, not really. And when it comes down to it, that is, or what I could say is get my shit together. When I was going back to that addiction thing again, there was a couple friends that were like, "You're spiraling out of control, buddy." They didn't say that, but they just said, "Get your shit together." That was pretty good advice.
It seems like, and this is beautiful, everything is very centered around truth and honesty. And, I love that, because I think so many ills of the world, if you were to just to make it truthful, if all information was known, there were no secrets, we would have all the information on what was dangerous, what was unhealthy, what was impacting the environment, what the actual consequences are, instead of looking at shifts of power and power dominance and value systems, money and, and you can bring to at least your own world, speak and bring as much truth as you can, the best that you can. And yeah, it's that telling your friend to get his shit together. That's beautiful. That it's not the thing you want to hear. It's the thing you need to hear.
Exactly. And because I didn't hear that very often, right? That wasn't something that was, I had pretty good relationships. I wasn't, you know what I mean? To hear that was like, ooh, I must be doing something. And of course, at the time, I probably sloughed it off and ignored it. So at the time, it wasn't really.
It stuck though, man.
Looking back, it stuck because it happened twice towards the end of my rope. And the thing is, being honest it's so much freer. It's so freeing, right? It's very much it's so much easier. Life is so much easier. But on the other side of it, it's hard when you're seeing what's going on in the world right now and the lies that can be perpetrated and the people that get away with the lies. It's like, so we're sitting here trying to live an honest life, just to, and this is what we're up against. It can be pretty black pillish as well,
But again, truth, be as aware of as much of it as possible. When you know the enemy, you got a way better chance of being able to defend yourself. So, even within the craziness of everything that's going on, like we have access to a lot more truths than we ever did before. I like to take, whether you believe aliens are real or not. Well, guess what? If aliens were real and a vehicle was captured, it leaked out. There's so much information out there that truth does get out. The problem is, how do you sift through the truth and the BS? But we have access to both of it now. Before, it was only one narrative. So, I don't know. It's a crazy black pill, but you get the whole pill now.
Lately, I've been thinking that it's harder to find the truth. It's easier to find what's not true. So I like just seeing what's not true. That's the first step to me. It's like, okay, well, that's not true. I know that. That's a lie. I know that. That's not true. I don't know what the truth is, but it's much easier to deconstruct what's not true.
Yeah, I don't need to know what you're telling me. All I need to know is, what aren't you telling me? Because now I can start making inferences. There was a reason you didn't. Right there. That's it. That's all I need to know. Because there's some things that would impact, and some things there'd be no reason you would ever do that.
Like my sister used to say, well, how do you know what's true? And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. I know that's not true. Like that. I'm not telling you I know what's going on. I'm telling you it's not that.
That kind of is mirrored in the court system, I think, with them being able to find you, not guilty, but not innocent, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like they don't know what it is, but they know it's not this thing.
Yeah.
What do you willfully ignore?
I wanted to ask you about this question because I don't really. Is this what like I willfully ignore that's like healthy, or willfully ignore that I should pay attention to?
Interesting thought. I hadn't thought.
Yeah. So when I think of it, and these questions are made open-ended in a way. When I think of what you willingly choose to ignore, for myself, it's the things that I know aren't good, but I've talked myself into, for whatever reason, going, yeah, don't pay attention to that. Like I have justified to ignore it. And it's like I'm willingly doing that. I've reasoned out my reasons and I'm just following it.
And that's it's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, how's this? Currently, I know I am addicted to caffeine. If I stop drinking caffeine, I will get a headache. I'm addicted. I'm willfully ignoring it because I enjoy drinking coffee 3 times a day. So I'm continuing to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
So
that's, I had that. So like for me, it was, health and physical activity. I'm willfully ignoring my need for more physical activity, that I've sort of settled into home life and working from home, and I'm ignoring what I used to do all the time in my past was more activity. So
was required, right? It was part of your daily life. We live different.
Yeah, but I'm also willfully ignoring the darkness in the world. Like there is a point when I'm like, okay, like I'm not going to let that, I am ignoring those types of things. I have to for my own, or at least not attach emotions to it, maybe pay attention to it from a detached or non-attachment.
Well, be aware of the darkness, but see all the light.
Yeah. So, I mean, that almost falls in that category too of that question. I was thinking of both those scenarios.
Yeah, to speak on that point, it's tough to perceive and not empathize. That's something I've been telling myself. Just not, don't let it in your heart space, because if you do, it will. I mean, it's sad shit. Yeah, it's just not.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it seems to be just like a harder and harder task that's escalating more and more as we go along here.
The only way that I can ever, because otherwise the world depresses me. My view, like upcoming cataclysm, Randall Carlson type of cataclysm. Like those types of things are so much more monumental, the state of the world, where it's going. But I think of the Buddha in Life is Suffering. That when you really think about it, like there is always going to be death. Everyone is going to die. Like, I guess it's the older I get, the more you experience those things, it just becomes like the bad memories are just there because that's the world. And when you start to realize that the only difference between happiness is sadness is the state of mind that you're in.
Yeah.
Like to understand that, maybe it's not ignoring it all. It's just not feeling it all. Soldiers have some of the best experiences of their life, and people people talked about in Nazi Germany, you're being oppressed, you're having these terrible things, but at the same time, you were happier than you'd ever been because it was those simple things, those family connections. What you did have was so much more monumental than the fast-paced world of just YouTube that we have today.
Yeah, you're in the moment. You have to be in the moment because you're like everything is critical, right? Yeah, it's like the hero. That's why I think the hero's journey is so important for everybody, because the hero is fucking in the moment. He's like living to the fullest.
And to harken back to what you talked about before, to me, those are the truths in the world. The truths that are not a black and white define, but the hero's journey. These are all things that you will experience within your life, and they play out in these ways. You will see them play out. And there are better ways to handle things. And it's not in this situation, do this, this, and this. But yeah, I've seen this map before. I kind of know the terrain. What rule do you have for yourself that you never break? And why do you think it is important?
It's the sobriety one now. Yeah, just don't drink or do drugs. I mean, caffeine's still there, but it's funny you mentioned caffeine. I'm thinking about getting rid of that. I'm slowing that down to almost nothing. But yeah, that's the rule, man. Don't what's the word for it?
Psychosomatic?
No,
Psychotropic.
yeah, psychotropic. Like no drugs that like CBD is okay if it's not doesn't have THC, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I include THC in that. I just don't drink or do psychedelics yet. I mean, that's the one. Does it have? So that's the one thing. Maybe I'll do psychedelics in the future, but right now, no alcohol, no drugs.
Well, and even maybe take a different vector, try doing it through some sort of, deep meditation and different practices. The runner's high, dump of cannabinoids, these types of things, the things that are already happening naturally when you're dreaming, maybe try to experiment with doing lucid dreaming and having those natural things within your body dumping. And so it's not this external thing. It is literally you supplying the experience from what is already there. And then it starts to become really beautiful.
Yeah. But I just know my addictive personality. Like if I do mushrooms one weekend, I'll just want to do them the next weekend. And then
maybe you'll just meditate like 20 hours a day.
So that's my big rule anyways. It's just sobriety. Abstinence really is what it is.
If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most? and why?
I probably get too aggro and excited about things. Like I start yelling a bit too much. So maybe like an Alex Jones type scenario, like let's say I'm talking to my mom and my sister about stuff and I'm just being me, but I get them they're kind of like, okay, like you're scaring me kind of thing.
Like, why are you yelling at me? It's like, I'm not yelling at you.
Yeah, I'm not yelling at you, but I'm, fucking passionate about this.
Passionate, yeah.
But it gets too much. So people are just going to shut off, right? So if I'm trying to get my message across and I'm yelling and screaming about the truth to people or whatever I'm yelling and screaming about, it's just not, that's not good. It's not going to help open people up. Although it seemed to work for Jones for quite a while, but
yeah. I think there's a time and a place for everything, right?
Well, that's kind of what I think. Like it's, for the most part I'm calm, but then I let it go sometimes. And
just don't be specific when you're in your ramblings. That was his problem. He got a little too specific in naming people and calling people out. And it's like, listen, man, you can't do that. You're going to end up being a nail or be wrong but yeah, I like people like that in the world. It's a sad thing that we have a system that is the way that is, because, even if somebody's wrong 40% of the time, if they're right 60% of the time, I still want to listen to them. I'm willing to take the bombs and the disasters and the complete and utter wrong stuff because, hey, we didn't know about this crazy grove with a Walter Cronkite, giant speaking owl and all of these elites that was like my introduction to like, no, there is an aspect of Hollywood, the guy giving you the news and this crazy, weird sex culty stuff. And yeah, the crazy guy told me.
Yep.
All right. That brings us.
Sorry.
What are you going to say? No.
No, I was going to cue you in.
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say that brings us to question 8, which is, what was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
And that was probably the night that I filled all the wine bottles up with water, went to the casino. My girlfriend took my dad's picture off the mantle. My dad had passed away 5 years prior. She took his picture off the mantle, prayed to him and said, I don't know what's wrong with Graham, but he's fucked up. He needs help. And that night, course, got in a big fight. When I came home, went out again, came back, ended up on the couch, but I did a whole bunch of uncharacteristic things with my process of hiding my addiction. And she found empty bags of cocaine in my pockets and stuff. And like, I knew, like, I woke up on the couch that day and I could see the look in her eye as she woke me up. And I knew like the gig was up. Like I was completely found out. So that completely embarrassing and humbling experience was actually a big weight off my shoulders. But at first it was pretty scary. And of course I couldn't ask for help. So I kept trying to do it on my own. And the more I tried to do it on my own, the worse it got. And it came to that where then, the weight that was lifted off, that surrender was just being able to ask for help and admit that, okay, yeah, I'm fucked and I need help. But that was the moment. It was very synchronistic as well. The one time I fucked up is the one time she prayed to my dad. I called it a divine intervention.
Listen, man, prayer works, mantra works. There's something about the frequency of asking a question. Sometimes you get answers. I like to think you always get an answer, but are you able to see it? Or is it the answer you wanted? Were you looking for it?
Yeah, and it's so interesting that there's a aspect of like ancestor, not worship, but like we are tied in, quantumly to our relatives. I mean, each other, right? But more specifically, our relatives more closely. So it's interesting that it was that, getting the family involved in the history and the genetics and all that stuff. Like that's, and then having that impact. Goes to show that there's some kind of connection there, I think.
Yeah.
Question 9. What is your greatest fear? How did you overcome it?
this is another tough one because it's just a hard question. I don't have an immediate fear. I think I probably have a fear of providing for my loved ones. Like I would really just like to have enough to be comfortable, for me and whoever needs healthcare or whatever it is. And I'm in Canada and I'm fucking saying that because our healthcare doesn't do fuck all for us. So, I mean, I just wish, I guess, that's a fear that like, I'll never just be at that comfortable state of like, okay, I've got enough money for a simple home and some healthcare and everything we need as far as that goes. Like, I think that's kind of sitting there, a little bit. But I mean, maybe there's bigger fears of the fucking stuff that we talk about with the darkness in the world. And, are they going to force us to do this or that or collapse this or that? I mean, those are probably fears and we already talked about how we overcome that. We don't attach our emotions to those sort of dark narratives in the world. I mean, unless they're going to come and really start affecting us directly. So I try to stay out of that sort of bigger picture fear, but I probably have these little fears that, providing, maybe fear of success in that way too. Like, yeah.
All kind of around the same thing. I mean, the world is creeping in on us. It's changing.
Yeah, you could say a few years ago, oh, that's just out there. Like, it's not affecting your life directly. Your life directly is like, hey, you're going to work. You're doing this. You're playing hockey. You're having a good time. They're not affecting you negatively, but now they are, because now they're directly impacting my fucking life. Depending on what decision I make, a decision that is not based on proper information from them. So it's become a completely different world now. It's right in your face now.
Yeah, it was crazy waking up to that. I certainly, one of the big shifts in my mind was the whole Build Back Better. It's like all of a sudden when all countries, all leaders have the same phrase during election times, I'm like, man, like the world is truly getting smaller. It's like that Jack Sparrow, phrase. It's like the world is closing in on you, that, everything's becoming one thing. Starlink is linking everybody to, one internet system. There's,
and we're paying $100 a month here in Canada for carbon tax that's going to somebody's pocket, and it's not really making a difference. I mean, so it's starting to directly affect us, these things. And we all want a reset of some sorts. I mean, the build back, it's not like we don't think that, things need to change in the world, but I mean, to me, shouldn't be at the hands of a bunch of unelected leaders in the world thinking that they're going to save the world by blocking out the sun. I mean, stuff like that.
Yeah, if things are going to collapse, it'd be nice to see the small business, be the one that grows, not the Amazons and, Pentagon.
I love that the first thing that you brought up was providing for others, like providing for your loved ones, because that speaks to not only surviving, because when you survive, you're just providing for yourself, right? But in order to thrive, which is what everybody wants freedom and sovereignty, being able to thrive and not just survive. But you need to have that overflowing, that outflowing, of your heart, like we were talking about before, and to be able to share that with others, with your loved one, because it sucks to see your loved one suffer, right? So everybody wants this ability to thrive, not just survive.
Yeah, and I never really thought about it that way. But I mean, for me, I don't really need. I'm at the point. I don't think I really need much, really. I mean, I just don't. I just want some peace and some, just like.
Be able to live as a human being,
weird.
Not have to do things like I have to go to this place and do this thing and do this so that I can put these numbers over here so I don't go into that cage.
Yeah.
That's the world.
Yeah. It seems like it's harder to get away from that than to be sovereign, I guess. It's a loaded word.
But I mean, but here's what I've learned, and not everybody wants the sovereignty, right? I mean, I really learned during this last couple of years from family, not my family directly, but people that my family have to associate with, that they don't want freedom. They want what's good for the greater good, no matter what kind of information that's based on. They don't want freedom. They want somebody to tell them what to do. They want to just go along with the herd and do what they're told.
They don't want responsibility.
They don't want responsibility.
It all comes from fear. When you're fearful of something, you don't want it. And some people like me, I'm not afraid of getting sick. It's
Right.
like, because in my mind, I go, yeah, anything, it could kill me. If I'm starting a new exercise routine, running upstairs, and I'm out of breath, it's going to suck, and I'm going to keep doing it until I get better, because the suck makes me stronger. If my immune system gets tested, then it gets stronger. So I do not look forward to the cold. I'm not going to try to ever get sick. I'm going to cover my mouth and hold my breath around you when you're sneezing and avoid you. But if I get sick, I'm fine with it. I don't feel the need to go to the hospital to get antibiotics to, shorten the period. I look at it as this armoring up.
Right.
You build a callus. If you're walking barefoot with shoes on, the stone is going to cut you. You only walk barefoot, and man, you can walk through thorns. So
yeah, I had something to add to that, and I lost it. Yeah, that's great.
but yeah, I'm with you there, buddy.
Oh, I think
I wish people weren't fearful in that way.
Well, and it's like, then that's fine if you want to be like, and that's the problem with freedom-minded individuals is we're okay with them being like that. You can be like that, just don't put that on me. But then that, they're on the offensive all the time, and we're not wanting to be offensive because we don't want to interfere with other people's lives. That puts us at a complete disadvantage right off the bat because they want us to do certain things for their idealism.
Yeah, they have to justify themselves, defend themselves in order to get us or the other party to act like they want them to act. So they're always on, like you were saying.
Yeah. So
Defend.
we're like, hey, yeah, go ahead, do that for the greater good. That's fine. That's you. Well, I'll do me. I'm not going to participate in that, but just leave me alone. And they're like, well, no, we can't because if you don't do it, then it doesn't work for me. I mean, fuck off.
Yeah.
See, that's my Alex Jones coming out again.
No, it's good. It's good. No, but it's that weird, crazy part of the world you got to walk down because it's like at the same time, I might not agree with all the traffic laws, but I'm going to stop at the stoplights. I'm going to follow those rules because they're fundamentally like we work better together. And yeah, it's where does that line stop? And some people think it should just be for everything and tracking and this and that. And I'm a good person. I don't break the law. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. But that doesn't mean that you're a criminal for wanting freedom.
Yeah.
What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
So this is another one I wanted to ask you guys about because I know. I mean, I've seen these questions for years, right? But now that I'm looking at it again, I'm like, well, what do you mean driving force? Like, how driving force in life?
You really like your Lexus,
driving
right?
me forward? Or?
Purpose. I would define it as purpose.
I think to see, it sounds inauthentic. Whenever I start answering this question, it doesn't sound authentic. I know I have purpose, but I feel like, okay, I guess it has to be just to learn, to keep learning because my job now is to learn. I get to make money by learning. So that seems to be my purpose. And in order to do that, maybe distill what I'm learning to help people to be of service. But just saying that being of service doesn't sound authentic to me. So, I mean, that seems to be my driving force, my purpose in life right now is to continue learning. So,
no, I like it. It speaks to you not knowing the destination, but you knowing the path.
yeah,
Exactly. The authenticity is I know I need to learn, and from that is going to be somehow that information will benefit other people.
Yeah, and I've manifested that job of learning. So, and I've purposefully manifested that. So now I guess that's my purpose. I mean,
oh yeah, I mean to tie it back to the Moldavite, like willing that highest destiny for yourself, but not worrying about what it's going to look like. That's exactly what you've done. From what it looks like, right? So that's awesome.
Yeah, and it took just a leap of faith to quit the job and do that, and I did that, and it seems to be working. So,
oh yeah. Question 11: Who were / are your role models and why?
Again, my dad, I'm trying not to have role models because so many people I looked up to as I was younger are just disgusting me right now. So, do I want to be disappointed by a false role model I'm trying not to hang my hat on others, but my dad had really open-minded, but kind demeanor, and he was funny. But but then he died of cancer. And was he holding a bunch of stuff in? Like, was he putting on that outward appearance to everybody? Was it authentic? It felt authentic, but maybe he was holding on to stuff that caused the disease. I don't know. But my dad, it seems to be, I have to just say my dad. I mean, he was the guy, Unfortunately, he died almost 20 years ago now.
Well, regardless, even if you have to put on the face, Graham, when you smile, you'll become happier. If you stand like a superhero, you'll feel empowered.
Exactly.
So, yeah, there's honesty and truth there no matter what.
Yeah, there is something to that fake it till you make it. That's why. It's exactly what you just said.
What quality do you most admire in a woman?
This is interesting because I don't think I ever had a woman with this quality until recently, but unconditional support and trust. And I have to create an environment for that, for trust, for sure. But just honesty again comes into this. But my girlfriend is completely supportive of what I do and the decisions I make and stuff that I do. Like, we never have this sort of conflict of questioning each other about this and that, right? We're just completely like, hey, if you want to go meet your friends for coffee or whatever, whoever they are, like, I trust her, she trusts me, that I never have to worry about what I can tell her, right? I can tell her anything I'm doing, anything I'm involved in, and she's supportive 100%. And to me, that's probably how I feel loved. I didn't realize that until I found her, because I went through a whole bunch of other relationships that weren't working, and that's what I admire the most in a woman.
Oh yeah, and it's great when you find it too. Like, looking back now that you have that thing, and then just being able to appreciate it that much more is
yeah.
Yeah, it's really important to have that, because people always have the question, like, am I good enough? Like, would somebody if you're showing someone everything unfiltered and they're still there, then the answer is yes. And the questions aren't there. Like, yeah, you do have value.
Yeah.
That's where security is for me, right? Not in, outside things. You create that. You created the environment to set that up to make that possible. And that's what.
Yeah, that's the security. Exactly. Living where you're not walking on eggshells and worried about how you're going to clean up the kitchen or how you're going to do these little tiny things that are constantly causing conflict. Like, that stuff should just not even be conflict. Yeah, we can have discussions about stuff like that, but it's never like an issue,
What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
Well, again, it comes back to being like admitting that I was fucked up and getting help, getting sober, but then also just recently quitting my job too, I think that was truly a leap of faith. So those two events, I moved to Alberta from BC in sobriety to change my career, but that wasn't really as courageous as like leaving that job or getting sober to begin with. Because without sobriety, I got nothing, right? Like, there's just like literally jails, institutions, or death. I know they talk, that's a cliche and they talk, but that's what ends up happening, right? Like,
yeah,
I'll end up on the street. I'll end up doing some drugs that are just going to kill me, right? Look at what, like, I heard Dr. Drew or somebody or Peterson talking about what's happening to these people on the streets now. And it's death. It ends up in death. Only so much time goes by, and then especially it's so much worse now than when I was getting sober. 15 years ago, it wasn't nearly as bad as it is now. So I probably wouldn't be alive.
Yeah. I think with the spirit of the question, the most courageous we're going to rank, then I think so you're right. Sobriety, like that's where it started, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, the other side is just as scary and beautiful in the same way that you are now just relying on other people. I mean, it is, you quit your job with the faith that others will support what you are doing and find value in what you are doing. And I mean, at some point you had to dive headfirst into it without that full support to make it happen. So yeah, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. There were other systems and other things that in place, but I mean, this is just, hey man, it's me. Here's my words. Here's the sounds that I'm making,
Exactly.
the connections that I've made, and that is going to sustain me.
Yeah.
My voice and my thoughts. That, I mean,
which I had a hard time with because my ex didn't like my voice, right? She said I had a terrible voice. So I had a real hard time even being able to be talking in front of people. And I also had I had a bit of a trauma when I was younger. Not trauma. I don't want to say trauma. A hard time speaking my mind when I was younger. I was afraid to say things that people would make fun of me or something, like, as a kid or a teenager and stuff, like just saying stupid stuff. And then people would like, ah, ha, 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 like, so I would be like, I would mumble a lot. I wasn't clear. I had a problem speaking my truth, maybe, I guess, or speaking out loud clearly to begin with. So it also makes it a little bit harder because of that sort of fear about my voice.
Well, you've certainly forced yourself through it, because I mean, for me, knowing you from the early days of Grimerica to now, yeah, you've certainly lost quite a bit of that shyness and reservedness. So
yeah,
congratulations, you kind of forced yourself into the therapy of doing it over and over
yeah,
again.
totally.
Exposure therapy.
Yeah. And again,
stop playing that jingle. Don't play that jingle. I don't want to hear it.
And
It's
again,
played 100 times and you're still doing it.
Yeah. And again, my girlfriend like supports my, like, I can sing out loud, like in front of her, which I mean, fuck, I couldn't even sing out loud for a while to even myself. So now I'm comfortable enough to sing in front of her and like that. So these are just little things, but like that was a fear of mine. And she's like, "Oh, I love your voice. Like, sing me a song." Like,
that's huge, man.
Yeah. Like,
could you imagine a bird that refused to sing? What that would do to the bird?
Yeah.
Like, man, humans are meant to sing.
I mean, I'm not just singing any song. It has to be a song that I really love.
Pink Floyd
from the 80s, usually, or something like that. But yeah, Floyd's there.
If you could give one sentence of advice to the future generations, what would it be?
Oh shit!
This is a new one.
I wrote some notes down, but I meant to expand on these notes because I want to make one really long sentence. But because I mean, this is especially coming from a guy who, like, I didn't want to feel pressured into having a family, right? So I'll get to the sentence, but I'll give you some context behind it. But because my sister and I both don't have kids, and we were kind of like, we were sort of rebelling in that way because we saw people going through relationships, getting married and having kids because they thought they were supposed to do that, and they were a disaster, right? A lot of people were breaking up, a lot of broken homes, a lot of just like, we're like, what the fuck? We don't want, like, I don't want to do that because I'm supposed to do it. So that was that sort of like contrarian rebelliousness in me but now looking back, I'm like, man, I probably wish I would have had kids, and we just did an episode with Simon Esler about the superorganism of the family, and your devotion as a father to the mother and the baby changes your cells. I mean, it's an amazing. So, I mean, that's what came up for me right now is like advice for future generations, devotion to family and to stay free and don't fall prey to the medical industrial apparatus and stay as natural as possible. I mean,
listen, that's some beautiful thoughts to come from, considering you were born into a system that you were taught and experiencing differently, and you have somehow found your way to that self-sovereignty. That's cool, man.
Yeah, well said. Those 3 pieces of solid advice: devotion, staying free, and then stay away from big pharma.
Yeah, exactly. And free as in, free from shackles or whatever. Like, doesn't have to be freedom. Like,
in your mind, right?
That's the word I'm looking
Sovereignty.
for. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it should have been freedom of like free thinking, not necessarily like politically.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Well said. I can't think of anything better to add, honestly. Yeah, this has been something I'm super happy to have been able to get to do. I feel like the show's come kind of like full circle for me, just because like you started it and now I get to, now I'm new and now I'm here interviewing you. Like, so it's just like a cool completing of a cycle. And it's so neat that it's happening so close to the solstice too, as we come to the year end. So
yeah, right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Me also being in the dry north, dark days, very cold and dry. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the days getting longer already.
Yeah. Soon.
I'm looking forward to getting cold out.
And you guys have had some great guests on. I mean, you guys are just killing it out there. So really appreciate what you're doing. It's awesome. And I think this helps people out. And I know some women that listen to the show and some, I think it's really important for men too, to just get honest and talk about these life-changing questions.
Yeah, dude, I agree. And I think that it is very introspective. I'm glad that people are getting some help out of it, or getting something out of it anyway, right? It doesn't matter what, just as long as it's something, right? And yeah, dude, I can't say enough. I just thank you for giving me for providing the environment. You created this environment. Like, the show, I wouldn't be here doing this if this wasn't for all the support and everything that you guys have built over the years. So I just say thank you.
Right on. No problem. You're welcome.
Adam, do you have any closing?
No.
words?
As always, Graham, you're a true friend. It's always nice to speak with you. Time is the most important thing that you can give to anybody for anything. I mean, it is the moment. It is a moment of your life that you have gifted to us and to the listeners, and continuing that spreading of knowledge. So yeah, thank you for your wisdom.
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians, and use labels? Now that's racism. I don't wanna Hawaii. Why? 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 I don't wanna Hawaii. Why is there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn Hayo wana hawene yowa. Hayo wana hawene. Hayo wana hawene yowa.
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.